Hare Krishna, everyone.
तुम्हारा चरण धोरे तुम्हारा चरण धोरे
Jaya Vegadomi, Jaya Doshashodi, Jaya Guna Dehodase.
Jaya Vegadomi, Jaya Doshashodi, Jaya Guna Dehodase. Jaya Guna Dehodase. Satsanga deho he amare Jaya satsanga deho he amare Pushechi sangero ashe Harinam Sankirtane Shuni kripa kore Shadavindu diya Tumi kripa kore Shadavindu diya Tumi kripa kore Shadavindu diya Deho Krishna namadane Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna se tomara Krishna dite paro Tomara sakati ache
Krishna se tomara, Krishna dite paro, tomara shakati ache.
to Ganga, Krishna Krishna boli.
Ami to Ganga, Krishna Krishna boli.
Ami to Ganga, Krishna Krishna boli. Gaitava pache pache. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Edase Karuna Kori. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Edase Karuna Kori. Vaishnava Thakura, Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Ohe Vaishnava Sagara, Edase Sagara, Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Edase Karuna Kori. Edase Karuna Kori. Edase Karuna Kori.
Edase Karuna Kori.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming this morning. It's
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Dandavат
Krishna.
Pranam.
And
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandvat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu.
Hare
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dhanvat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhu,
Krishna
Dandavad
Prabhu,
Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandvat Pranam.
Dhanyavad pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavāt Pranam.
So nice to see all of you, and it's early in the morning here, and probably where you are as well. And thank you for taking the effort of coming so early and giving us your wonderful association. This is our time with Krishna. This is our time meditating on Krishna's words and his activities and his teachings. So today we start with chapter 4, and many of you are in a very dedicated way doing the homework and keeping up. Thank you for doing that, and please keep doing that. So we will start with the Mangalacharan prayers, and we will recite them. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, 1 second here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we were starting chapter 4, and Krishna and Arjuna are continuing their very enthusiastic discussion, their very monumental, wonderful discussion. And so this is chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. So the second and third chapters stressed working in knowledge. In this chapter, Krishna gives that knowledge. So chapter 4 is transcendental knowledge, right? This is the Jnana Yoga. It's the chapter on knowledge. And the amazing thing in this one is that Krishna is giving the transcendental knowledge. And what is that knowledge? That knowledge is act for Krishna. So that is the ultimate spiritual knowledge that Krishna is giving. Spiritual knowledge is known as Shruti, that which is heard. In bygone ages, people would hear such knowledge, immediately remember it, assimilate it, and perfectly communicate it to the next person with perfect clarity and accuracy. In this way, the knowledge passed through many generations. Chapter 4 is entitled Transcendental Knowledge, for it is knowledge which outlines how one can establish their divine connection with God. The famous Vedic aphorism thus encourages, aim to see God through the ears rather than the eyes. So we are seeing Krishna through our ears, not through the eyes. And even in the Middle Ages, like in the just 100, 200 years ago, people had memories, it's described, that were at least 100 times more powerful than what we have today. And this is because it was a culture of remembering. Anything that you hear, we're very proud of being able to write everything down, and now everyone knows how to read and write. But the thing is that writing is a job, right? Writing is a excursion. It takes time. It's work. That's why people get paid for writing. If you have a memory that can memorize things just by hearing, then why would you need to write it down? Just think. This is why Prabhupada said that advancement of material science and material knowledge is advancement in one way, but it's not advancement in another way. So we're advancing in the sense that we can, we have these computers, we have these laptops, we can write everything down. But it's not advancement in the other way, that if you can memorize it, then why would you need to write it down? Then it's already there in your mind. Of course, you may want to write it down for dissemination. And Vyasadeva did that 5,000 years ago. But you wouldn't write it down just for yourself. And so in previous ages, people heard, and when they heard, they perfectly remembered it, just like a book, right? It was, their mind was like a book, it was there. And then they could also share it with the next person. They would teach it by repeating what they heard. And this knowledge, therefore, is that which is heard, Shruti. The Bhagavad Gita is also Shruti, because it's directly coming from Krishna and it's heard throughout years. And this hearing process is very powerful. This is why even whatever form of knowledge we have to amass information, reading the internet, reading this, we also need time to just hear, because Krishna is revealed through the ears. Hearing that vibration, hearing the sound vibration, hearing Krishna Katha. By hearing the same knowledge, it has a greater powerful effect than just reading. And even just, those in education have to recognize this, because if reading was the same as hearing, then all the schools and universities would close down. We just have, give people a list of books and they would read it and they would know it. But we know, even in the context of material life, that hearing is a different thing than reading. When you go to the professor and you hear from them, even if you hear them online or you hear a video, it's different than just reading it. It brings the knowledge to life. It deepens our understanding. It explains things. So in the same way, we have to hear Krishna's glories. We have to learn about Krishna through our ears. And if we do that, then we are engaging in this process of Shravanam Kirtanam, of hearing. So, I'll skip this one actually. Well, maybe I shouldn't. Okay, yeah, this is a nice overview. The acronym for this chapter is EARS. The first 10 verses talk about the eternal education. Krishna set up the instruction manual for the universe, periodically appearing in the world to re-inject spirituality. A is accurate understanding. Krishna clears up common misunderstandings. 16 to 24, removing reactions, how we can become free from reaction. And finally, 25 to 42 is about sacrifice. To get transcendental knowledge, one does sacrifice, humbly submitting to a spiritual master, so knowledge can blossom in the heart. So chapter 4 is actually a very wonderful and very deep chapter. It's not just about knowledge, but real knowledge. It's just not just information knowledge. So it's the sambandha knowledge. Krishna is eternal and transcendental. That is the knowledge. Abhideya, practical application. Learn how to work as a sacrifice for Krishna from a spiritual master, and then you get the spiritual knowledge. And prayojana, goal. Everything is transcendental. Seeing everything as transcendental. Knowing the transcendental. That is the goal. Prayojana. So transcend the dualities of the world by working as a sacrifice for Krishna with transcendental knowledge received from a bona fide guru. So it's about knowledge. What is the highest knowledge? How to get that knowledge? Who to receive it from? All the aspects of knowledge are described in this chapter. So there's 5 topics in the Bhagavad Gita: the Atma, the material world, activities, Kala, and Ishvara. And this chapter is in some ways dealing with all 5, because it's dealing with knowledge about the absolute truth, about Krishna and everything related with Krishna. Text 1 through 10, transcendental knowledge about Krishna. The second and third chapters stressed working in knowledge. In this chapter, Krishna gives that knowledge. So any work that's done, it changes in its quality when we do that work in knowledge, when we, do that as an offering to Krishna in knowledge. So Krishna describes, first of all, what is the source of spiritual knowledge? And Arjuna begins this chapter by asking Krishna that how has this knowledge come about? From whom has it come about? And Krishna responds by telling that the first person I instructed this knowledge to, imagine how wonderful, how great Krishna is to the sun god Vivasvan. Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, and Manu to Ikshvaku. And then Krishna asks, but Vivasvan's older to you in age, how is this possible? And then Krishna tells about his transcendental nature, that he can remember all of his different incarnations, but Arjuna cannot. And therefore, his body is transcendental, it is spiritual, and he is eternal. And any knowledge that he gives is beginningless, it's eternal. So that's very important. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is aparushaya, superhuman. Since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. So this knowledge does not have any human interpretation in it. Therefore, we have to accept it without this interpretation. We have to accept it as it is. Because the disciplic succession which carried this ancient knowledge down through the ages is lost, Krishna now instructs it again to Arjuna, who is qualified to receive it, because he is a friend and devotee of Krishna. So Krishna tells that he gives it first to Vivasvan, and then he says, "I'm telling you again because this knowledge has now become lost. That's why it needs to be repeated again." And then he answers the question, "Well, why am I telling it to you?" Because he says, "You are my devotee and my friend." Mad bhakto si me sakha cheti. You are my bhakta and my sakha. My bhakta and my sakha. Prabhupada explains that one thing is to be a devotee of Krishna, another is to be a friend of Krishna. And the friend is even a closer relation. And when we are a friend of Krishna, not only are we devoted to Krishna, but we have Krishna's best interest in mind. We are thinking of Krishna and Krishna's glories, and we want to share it with others. So Arjuna wanted not just this knowledge for himself, but he wanted to share this knowledge with others. And therefore, he was Krishna's friend. Just like a friend is a true friend when he tells your glories, how wonderful you are to everyone he meets. Right? When he wants others to like you and appreciate you, that person is a real friend. Whereas a person who's devoted to you but doesn't, glorify you is a very good friend, but not as dear of a friend as someone who actually has your best interest in mind. So Krishna, as devotees, they are glorifying Krishna, and in that way, they're Krishna's friend. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. It's told by me to you because you are my devotee and my friend. So Prabhupada explains in these purports that only that person who is an unalloyed devotee of Krishna and is a friend of Krishna, like Srila Prabhupada, who brought this knowledge all over the world, only that person can translate the Bhagavad Gita and give and understand the actual meaning of the text. And all these 700 editions of the Gita have made very little impact in the lives of people because they were translated by persons who were not pure devotees or friends of Krishna. They had their own ulterior motives and agendas. Prabhupada's only agenda was to glorify Krishna, was to give us Krishna, and therefore he had access to Krishna. Text 4 to 8, knowledge of Krishna's transcendental position. So now Arjuna asks how Krishna, who is only about 100 years old, could have instructed Bhagavad Gita to Vivasvan over 100 million years ago. So you say, wow, Krishna was an old man by that time, 100 years old. He was like just barely walking. Maybe that's why he decided to be Arjuna's charioteer, because he was so old he couldn't fight. No, no, no. Krishna was on this planet for about 125 years. But until the last day he was on this planet, until he disappeared from this planet, Krishna was the sweet age of 16. He was always a young man. He never aged. The Lord has a form, but it's a spiritual form. That form never ages. That form never disintegrates. That form never dies, because his soul and his body are one and the same. In our case, in the material consciousness, our body and our soul are different. In spiritual world, there's no difference between the soul and the body. The soul itself is a spiritual form. Similarly, Krishna's form is his person. So Krishna does not age. Furthermore, at that time, in the previous age, people were living for hundreds of years, maybe even up to 1,000 years. And that's why 100 years was nothing at that time. That was, now in Kali Yuga, we are lucky if we live 100 years. But we live, average age 80, 90, like that. So this was a previous age where 100 years was nothing. Krishna's answer reveals his transcendental position. My birth and death are not like yours, Krishna says, for I appear in my original transcendental form, which is unborn and never dies. Right? So Krishna tells, I appear in my original form, and this form is unborn and never dies. Prabhupada, in the purport to text 5, he says, the difference between the Lord and Arjuna is that the Lord remembered the incident, whereas Krishna could not remember. That is a difference between, the Lord remembered the incident, whereas Arjuna could not remember. That is the difference between the part and parcel living entity and the Supreme Lord. Although Arjuna is addressed herein as the mighty hero who could subdue the enemies, he is unable to recall what had happened in his various past births. Therefore, a living entity, however great he may be in the material estimation, can never equal the Supreme Lord. Anyone who is a constant companion of the Lord is certainly a liberated person, but he cannot be equal to the Lord. So we say Nara and Narayan, right? Krishna is Narayan, Arjuna is Nara. The Nara and Narayan, although the living entity can become so exalted, just like God, but he can never be God. Krishna is always Krishna. Krishna is, we can become godly. And though we worship the devotees, and though the devotee is so worshipable, but still Krishna's position always remains as a supreme personality of Godhead. And that's being established here. Text 4 to 8 further describe Krishna's transcendental position and why he appears in this world. Chapter 4 is also filled with famous verses from the Bhagavad Gita. And one of these very famous verses is the reason why Krishna appears, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrajamyam. I appear by my own will to re-establish religion and annihilate irreligion by uplifting the saintly and destroying the miscreants. Right? In every age, Krishna appears, and he does his work. He uplifts the saintly, he destroys the miscreants, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, right? It is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and wherever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. So the same knowledge, but it appears in different ways. This is called religious pluralism, right? Well, it's not called that, but religious pluralism is a study of how God can be understood through different religious traditions. How there's so many different religions and how do they connect? How do they overlap? So if we actually study them very carefully, we can see that they're teaching the same message, but on different levels, according to time, place, and circumstance, and according to their audience. So sometimes the Lord appears or sends his messenger to teach the spiritual knowledge by which people can get basic knowledge of him. Like Jesus Christ said, he said that I'm not telling you everything because you are not ready for it. You cannot handle it. He himself said that. I'm not telling you about the kingdom of God, how it looks, but the Bhagavatam gives us that deep information. So it's the same knowledge. In fact, in one purport in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says that Krishna even appears in other species, not just in other parts of the world, but even other species, in the bird species, in the beast species. He appears to, and he says in such an interesting, he says to preach to his own kind, right? Like, you know, the birds are going to hear the other birds. They're not going to hear the human beings. So to promote, or you could say share Krishna consciousness, even in other species, Krishna appears. Of course, that's rather rare because Krishna, the gateway for most of us is through the human form of life. So Krishna appears in the human level, plane most often, but he's not even limited to this species. The Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the incarnation in the age of Kali is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread the worship of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting of the holy names, and spread Krishna consciousness throughout India. He predicted that this culture of Sankirtan would be broadcast all over the world, from town to town and village to village. I'm just going to, 1 second here. Yeah, I was just checking something. So Prabhupada, Krishna appears and then his devotees further carry on his work. So Prabhupada here is describing how Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement will spread all over the world, from every town to town and village to village. And the devotees further his work, and therefore Prabhupada, when he came, he furthered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's work. And in fact, he took Krishna consciousness outside of India to every village and town of the world. Of course, his taking is non-different than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's taking. So Prabhupada never took any credit. But still, it was the Lord's devotee that actually fulfilled the Lord's intention and the Lord's mission. So Prabhupada is writing himself in this text about his own position and mission. So now Krishna talked about his transcendental position. Krishna talked about the purpose of his incarnation. And now he tells us the result of knowing his transcendental position, which is a very famous verse. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. Those who understand this about Krishna's appearance and activities are liberated. The actual translation is, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and disappearance does not, upon leaving his body, take birth again in this material world, but attains to my eternal spiritual abode, O Arjuna. Just by knowing about Krishna's transcendental nature and activities, one gets liberation. Many persons in the past have thus become liberated from attachment, fear, and anger, and ultimately achieved love for Krishna. By gaining this knowledge, we become free from attachment, fear, and anger. So you may say, what's the big deal? Why does just knowing about Krishna and his transcendental nature liberate us? Because if you survey the face of this earth, most people don't know that God has a form. And even if they're godly, if they follow a religious practice, most religions don't teach about Krishna's transcendental activities. There's just no knowledge there. It's actually so rare even to have a conception of a personal God. Most religions today especially are teaching about an impersonal God. He's light, he's energy, he's a puff of air, he's a burning bush. He's all this energy, but who he is, his personal activities and forms, that God is a person, is so hard for people to accept. It's so hard for them to accept. And if someone can realize this truth about Krishna, they must be liberated. And if they understand, means that they have a deep appreciation for this. They actually understand it. They have actually understood. Okay, and here it is. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. That verse again. So why are we here studying the Bhagavad Gita? For this very reason. Because if we, by studying the Gita, can understand Krishna's transcendental nature and appearance, we then can go back home, back to Godhead. It's Krishna's made it so easy. He's given us so many ways in which we can reach him, and this is the path being described here. So Prabhupada, in this purport, next purport 10, he describes the entire process from Shraddha to Prema. And this is again why everything's in the Gita, because in cryptic form it's there. Prabhupada is expanding on it. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master. And under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from material attachment. Right? So we have Shraddha, the preliminary desire, the faith in some spiritual life. Tata sadhu sangha, we become associated with the sadhus, and then we become initiated. So initiation is the beginning of spiritual life, not the end of it. And then once we get initiated, then the spiritual master engages us in the process of bhakti yoga, of the regulated process of devotional service. That is called bhajana kriya. This is where really the nectar begins. When we just start this bhajana kriya, we're just absorbed, we're chanting, dancing. And then by doing this bhajana kriya, we are, we are loving it. And so we become fixed in it. That is called nishtha, right? Nishtha. Solid. We're undisturbed. We're steadfast. There's steadiness. And from that, then we acquire taste from the you could say the intellectually driven somewhat mechanical process of devotional service, we come to the platform of raga, which is the taste, or asakti. The next stage is asakti, the taste about hearing about the absolute truth. This taste leads one further forward to attachment for Krishna, ruchi. And this attachment then becomes even more solidified in the form of bhava, love, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. And then bhava then turns into prema. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So by the slow process of devotional service, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment. From the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy, then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. That's a very interesting sentence. Prabhupada is saying that one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual individuality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. So, why is he writing like this? Anyone want to suggest how is it that Prabhupada is saying the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality? Why would we be fearful of that? It's saying that the guidance of the spiritual master, due to that, one attains the highest stage, which is after being freed from material attachment and fear, the rest of the things. So why is Prabhupada writing like this?
Usually fear emerges from not knowing what would happen. So if the people or the transcendentalist is not aware of what will happen after he goes to the Lord's abode, then he would be fearful of maintaining his individuality.
Very good. Very nice answer. So we don't know what the future holds for us. And so therefore we're afraid about the future because it's the unknown. Very nice. Other responses?
That experience sometimes we have as a persons, that we think that, okay, there's pain in personhood, so better that if there's personhood in the future, or if there's painless experience, it'll have to be a non-personal existence. There's no way you can have a personal experience and still have a painless, joyous, endless experience.
Very nice. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you for that. Very wonderful.
Is it also because we are not that pure and don't have the conviction yet that the Lord will protect us and take care of us?
Yes, that is also there, because we are not convinced about Krishna's protection. We are afraid of, again, what happens next. So we may be afraid of what happens next and of the unknown, but then that would be the fear of the unknown. But that wouldn't be fear of our spiritual identity. So the reason why Prabhupada here is saying fearful of one's individual spiritual personality is because of the reason Madan Gopal Prabhu pointed out, particularly in addition to these other reasons, that that in our present day experience, our individuality, our personhood has been so painful, right? So many anxieties, problems, conflicts. And so we think that if in the spiritual world I'm also a person, then that'll be painful. Or the only way out of pain is to give up personhood, is to give up individuality. And this is why impersonalism, especially now in Kali Yuga, is becoming so prominent, because people are so miserable. And so they think, the solution to my misery must be that we all just become one. If we're all one, we don't have to interact with one another, right? Actually, there's one Indian professor of Indian philosophy, very famous lady who came to Oxford University when I was studying there, and she gave a seminar. And one of the Christian participants, he challenged her. And she was an Advaitin, meaning she believed in Shankara's, Mayavad philosophy. He challenged her. He said that in your tradition, in your philosophy, there's no place for love. Because if everyone becomes one, then how do you love one another? It's not possible. So the whole idea of love of God cannot exist in your tradition. Of course, the impersonalists, they deny it. She denied it and tried to explain it in different ways. That no, well, that's love itself, that oneness, all these things. But the fact is that no, until we have two people, until there's someone else besides us, how can we love? There's no potential there. So we think that in our loving relationships here are so miserable. If we love someone in the spiritual world, it will be the same. But that is in anartha, and Krishna frees us from that fear of individuality by showing us his loving transcendental form, which is the ultimate goal of life, which is all blissful and all perfect. So text then, after describing in that previous section his transcendental nature and how to know that transcendental nature, in text 11 to 15, Krishna starts to talk about how he reciprocates with the devotee who knows his transcendental nature, how he reciprocates with the devotee who is trying to know him, because he makes it clear that this process of devotional service is not a one-way relationship or a one-way street, that we are loving God and God is just not there for us, but rather it is a true relationship. It is reciprocation. When we take one step towards God, he takes 10 steps towards us. And this is a fact. Whenever we turn towards Krishna and we show our intention of an effort, we put in our effort to love Krishna, Krishna immediately reciprocates. Text 10 explained that one who approaches Krishna without attachment, fear, anger will achieve pure love of Godhead. What about those who understand Krishna and take shelter of him, but cannot fully surrender and overcome their attachments? So Krishna first describes pure devotion, and then reading Arjuna's mind, there's always a subtext within the text. Arjuna is thinking, well, what about me? I cannot, overcome these things and be perfectly pure-hearted, as you described in the first part of chapter 4. So Krishna's now going to describe what happens or how he relates with those who cannot fully surrender, but are on the path, who are very sincere and intent to help people and help themselves advance in spiritual life. Krishna rewards the worshipper whatever he desires. If the worshipper cannot be free from the material desires, Krishna will fulfill those desires. But such persons generally approach demigods, not Krishna. There are 5 rasas: neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental and romantic, Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. There are 3 features of God: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And in this purport, Prabhupada describes all of these things, and then he says everyone is searching for Krishna in different aspects of his manifestations. So we're all searching after the same thing, the same person, but in different ways and different forms. We're approaching Krishna in different ways, these 5 rasas, and in different forms. His 3 different features or forms that Krishna manifests. Just like we have a painting here of a scientist, right? A scientist who believes in the absolute, power of the laws of nature. Any scientist who believes in the law of gravity is appreciating God because they believe in something absolute. There has to be something absolute in this world, and even the most atheistic scientist or someone has to agree that there's something that never changes, that's everything else is based upon, some fundamental element or some law of physics. And so I was reflecting on this. The fact is that a materialist also appreciates God as the laws of nature, but they just don't put a name to it and a face to it. The devotee is also agreeing that this is Krishna's power, this is Krishna, but then the devotee is saying, no, but this ultimate absolute truth has a face and a form, and you can actually know that form. So in that way, everyone is actually a theist. Everyone believes in some sort of ultimate God. The only difference is, except for some Buddhist philosophers who believe in voidism, but the main difference for the majority of the population is whether that absolute truth is personal or impersonal. That's where most people are stuck, and the majority of people are entrenched in the idea that God is impersonal. And this is why Prabhupada, he would speak up and talk about Mayavad philosophy, impersonalism, more than atheism. He would counter and battle against impersonalism far more than atheism, because the real problem of society is impersonalism. It's not atheism. Even statistically speaking, nearly 85% of the world's population officially ascribes to a religion. So only 15% are left, and in that 15%, probably some are just not, decided, or they don't fill out the form or whatnot. So everyone has some conception of God, but whether God is personal or impersonal, that is the problem, and that's why Prabhupada talks about it so often. So now the famous verse, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly, Krishna says. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Very beautiful verse. As you surrender unto me, Krishna says, I reward you accordingly. So on this point, there was once a class or talk that Aindra Prabhu was giving, Aindra Prabhu in Vrindavan. And he told the devotees there in this class, he said, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. Right? Well, no, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process, and we can make it as gradual as we like. Right? So yes, it's a gradual process, but Krishna here is saying if we practice it very intensely and very intently, then Krishna will reward us. Krishna will appear before us. Krishna will guide us. We will feel the presence of Krishna because we are putting in the effort, so Krishna will respond. And then finally, this is why a devotee doesn't, decry anyone or look down upon anyone, because he understands that Krishna is saying, everyone follows my path in all respects. People are sometimes turning towards Krishna, and many people are not turning towards Krishna, but they're going through life experiences that will take them closer to Krishna. So when we say, well, I'll just go through those life experiences, why do I need to chant and pray and all these things? That's because though they're going through those life experiences, their progress is very slow. And that's what Aindrapa was saying. The Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. We can make it as gradual as we like. So it'll become very, very slow. But if we intentionally, actively try to practice God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will respond very quickly. And now Krishna tells us how we can become free from these attachments. And most of the remaining chapter actually talks about Varnashram. Krishna is saying, as you come to me, I reward you accordingly. So people are on different paths. All those paths are Krishna's paths. So what are those paths? And how can people in those paths approach Krishna? That is being described here, the four Varnas. Krishna created the Varna Ashram Dharma system so such people could purify themselves by regulating their desires. The four Varnas, according to the qualities and work, are being described here. It's also this chapter that says Chaturvanya Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. That this Chaturvarnas, these four Varnas, Krishna says, are established by me alone, and they're based upon, what are they based upon? On our qualities and our activities, guna and karma. So we just talked about this. I'll skip this now. And Krishna talks about action and inaction and inaction and action, right? This is the famous verse that's very confusing. You read other translations of the Gita, and it's like these translators have no idea how to translate this verse. It's like it just blows their mind. They sometimes saw this translation of the Gita that said, inaction and action and action and inaction, and neither action, no. I mean, this person who translated this verse, he just couldn't figure out what in the world Krishna is saying. So Prabhupada says, without following previous liberated souls, one is sure to be bewildered in discerning proper action, improper action, improper action, and inaction. Proper action is karma, it is pious works. Improper action is vikarma, bad works. And inaction is bhakti yoga. Inaction for most people means doing nothing, but for the devotee it means doing everything for Krishna. Doing everything for Krishna, that is true inaction. That is true inaction. So the first thing is inaction, that we must act, but if we're doing it for Krishna, it's inaction. One must accurately differentiate between proper action, improper action, and transcendental knowledge and transcendental action. Karma, vikarma, and akarma. Akarma can result from karma, and karma can result from akarma. In other words, freedom from reaction can result from proper action, and sinful reaction can result from improper renunciation. So beautiful, isn't it? Akarma can result from karma. We can act on the transcendental level by acting, meaning we can not act materially by acting if we do it for Krishna. And karma can result from akarma. We can get karma, we can get bad karma from not doing anything, meaning not fighting, right? In the case of Arjuna, Arjuna was not going to fight, but that would have been karma, that would have caused sinful reactions. So improper renunciation is also an action. So apparently it is akarma, superficially we're not acting, but if we don't act, we can also be sinful. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam cha vikarmana, akarmanascha bodhavyam, gahana karmano gati. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. I was actually thinking that Krishna consciousness is the process that teaches us how to love. We all want to love, but we don't know how. Krishna consciousness teaches us that this is the way you can truly love, and you can truly share this love and share love with others. Because that's the true way of loving is by loving Krishna. In the same way, Krishna consciousness is actually telling us how to act. People don't know what to do, why they're doing what they do, how to do what they're doing, and what is the right thing to do. And that is Krishna consciousness telling us. So this is here, people sometimes ask, where does karma come from? Like, where does the idea come from? It's right here in chapter 4. This is also the law of karma. What goes around comes around, right? We are always bound by the results of our actions. We may do something and we may feel that we got away with it. Actually, it must come back to us. Just like there are universal physical laws, like the laws of gravity, the laws of motion. Similarly, the scriptures are teaching us, the Gita is teaching us, that there are also universal moral laws. Just like the law of motion says, if I hit the table, it hurts because the table hits me back. Right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If I hit the table will hit me back. In the same way, karma is telling us that there's universal moral laws. If I do something good and no one notices, I never get appreciated for it, that goodness will still come back to me. If I do something bad and I get away with it, the police never catch me, I never get punished for it. People don't know that I did the bad thing, but that bad will come back to me. And this is why the world is fair. Ultimately, it is fair. Because whatever good and bad we're getting, it is perfect. It is the result of our past activities or our present activities. There is a saying that the wheels of karma grind very slow, right? The wheels of karma grind very slow, but they grind very fine. Right? They go slowly, but it's very fine. Everything, every act, every deed that we've done, we will reap the results of it in due course of time. Why? Because it's a universal moral law. It's instantaneous. If you drop an apple, it's going to fall. Similarly, you do something good, it will come back to you. You do something bad, it will come back to you. So, Krishna says, one's actions produce no reaction when he works without attachment to sense gratification. Only for life's necessities, and is satisfied with whatever he obtains by providence. Working in this consciousness reveals Brahman. I'm sure you've noticed in life that what you get, you generally get quite easily. And what you work for, you generally don't get it. And even if you do get it, it's like very meager. And I find that, like 20, like they say, 20% of the people support or contribute 80%. And 80% of the people contribute 20%. That's like a universal law in terms of management and communities, etc., etc. In the same way, you'll notice in your life 20% of the effort you put in brings you 80% of the result. And 80% of your effort brings 20% of that result. And so Krishna here is saying that a devotee of the Lord is satisfied with the 80%. The materialist, in terms of material life, he's satisfied with the 80% because the materialist is working very hard to, go from that to that next level, the level that really it's not already set out for him by providence. And so therefore they have to work so hard day and night just to move that, measuring point from 80 to 85%. But he's telling a devotee is someone who does his work without attachment, leaves the result to Krishna. He works for life's necessities. He doesn't try to become the top dog everywhere. And he's satisfied with whatever he obtains by providence. We think, oh, if only I'd made this decision or that decision or this thing. But whatever came by providence was meant for us. Whatever came, whatever was written in our destiny is coming to us. And if we work within that, we are peaceful. If we're somewhat satisfied by that, we're peaceful. And then when we are peaceful, then we can understand Brahman, right? Then we can then we can delve into spiritual life. Working in this consciousness reveals Brahman. Then we have time to develop our Krishna consciousness. It's just like, we have some people who become YouTube, famous YouTubers, what's the word? And then, on other platforms, they become influencers. And these things, and to become a YouTube sensation requires so much effort. Like you have to make all the nice videos, and then some videos aren't good, and then you post them, you edit them, you redo them, and you're trying to make a profile for yourself, and and so someone may put in so much effort to become famous, and for someone else it's just natural. They're in the right place, right time, they're already famous. So being famous is not a problem, right? But it's the too much exertion in trying to become what Providence hasn't given us that may destroy our bhakti, that may agitate the bhakti, because now we're putting in 80% of the effort for that extra 20%. And Rupa Goswami says this in the Nectar of Instruction: Atyahara prayasasya prajalpanya magraha janasangasya lolim cha shadbir bhakti vinashyati. Atyahara, the first thing that destroys our bhakti is eating more than is necessary, and I'm working on that one. You can ask my family. I eat too much. But eating more than necessary destroys our spiritual life, because then we can't wake up in the morning and we're feeling lazy and tired. And atyahara also means endeavoring for more than what is required or what is easily obtained. That also, atyahara, one example of that is eating, but in general it means taking more, aspiring for more than what is necessary. So yes, this is a really neat picture, all these suited people sitting there with samosas and Prabhupada's books. So that is akarma, right? Acting in this world, but acting for Krishna. So when one acts in this way, one can reach Brahman. Krishna reveals himself to us. And this is what Krishna then says in 424. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahmakarma samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Now, in this next section, Krishna talks about the varieties of sacrifice. Text 25 to 29 lists various sacrifices appropriate for different types of people. If performed in the consciousness described in 19 to 23, they give the result described in 24, realization of Brahman. Yes. So sorry, I'm going a little over time. I'm going to try to wrap up soon. No, actually, yeah, I guess it's 8:08, so we have maybe 5 more minutes, and then I'll ask for question and answer. So there's different types of sacrifice for different types of people. According to who we are, we sacrifice in different ways. Yajna is translated as sacrifice, a ceremony connected with the divine. It can be a formal ceremony, it can be informal. Yajna, generally when we think of yajna, we think about the fire sacrifice. But every action is an act of sacrifice. And this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. This is the beauty of Vedic culture and Vedic civilization, that any act that was done had an aspect of sacrifice in it, and this is what kept the world going. And so every act can be an act of sacrifice. And so here it's being described that the devotee of the Lord engages his activities in Krishna's service. And therefore, he's always performing sacrifices, yajna. Like Krishna says, yajna nam japa yagyosmi. Even our chanting of the holy name, japa is a yajna, it's a sacrifice. Similarly, when we do, even Krishna describes even the most, you could say, base material activity, which is sex life. Even that is an act of sacrifice. It can be done if it becomes an act of sacrifice. That is to produce Krishna conscious children. Even that has an aspect of sacrifice in it, right? And then Krishna says, then I am sex life, which is not against the rules and regulations, because that is done as a sacrifice for the Lord. Otherwise, it's avoided. So when it's done within marriage to produce children, then it's a yajna. It's another form of sacrifice. So in spiritual culture, everything can be, life can be lived in a very enjoyable way. Eating, sleeping, all of the activities are done very nicely. Devotees of the Lord, they eat very nicely, they lead their life very nicely. But the food that they're eating, they're offering it as a sacrifice to the Lord. They're offering it to the Lord. So I'm going to skip some verses and go to, and we're almost toward the end anyway. Krishna talks a little bit about Varna Ashram in this chapter. And in Varna Ashram also, I'll just mention this, that in Varna Ashram also, it's every Varna and Ashram is an act of sacrifice. Right? Every Varna, every Ashram is sacrificing something. They get certain benefits and they have to sacrifice also in certain ways. Okay, and then one last thing. So Krishna is saying that duty and sacrifice must be performed. In this chapter, he's saying they must be performed, but how does one acquire that knowledge about what duties and what sacrifices one should do? And that is this verse here, which is a very famous verse. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Right? The self-realized souls, they can give you. What type of guru are we approaching? Krishna is telling Arjuna very clearly that he should approach a spiritual master in this section. They are tattvadarshinas. They are people who have seen the truth. Tattvadarshina. They are not theoretically describing Krishna. And they have seen the truth because they are describing what they have seen through the eyes of the disciplic succession, by personal realization, and also they themselves are in the line of disciplic succession. That is the key point, right? So not just any guru, but a guru who's not, who's self-realized themselves. They've seen the truth and are speaking by their direct realization, and also through the realization of the disciplic succession that they are in. And there's two things that we must do. Inquire submissively. We must ask questions. This is Arjuna's example also. He's asking Krishna questions, and also, but not just questioning in a challenging way, but rendering service. And we see this even in material consciousness, even in material life. If we want knowledge, we have to approach the teacher in a submissive way. We have to, please the teacher in some way, and we have to ask questions. So finally, last quote here, Prabhupada in the purport says, satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there's submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. Unless there's submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. And Prabhupada repeats this sentence 3 times in the Bhagavad Gita. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is a secret of advancement in spiritual life. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master. And when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So, satisfaction of the spiritual master is a secret of success in spiritual life. This is why we need a spiritual master. It's not just that we do it because we need a fad. No, if the secret of advancement in spiritual life is getting this mercy of the spiritual master, getting the spiritual master, and we can get the spiritual master. We can get the audience, the kind of the mercy, the compassion of the spiritual master, if we avoid 2 things: blind following. So don't just follow anyone without asking questions, or absurd inquiries, or too much arrogance, always questioning absurd inquiries. And this knowledge is so wonderful that Krishna says, he concludes by saying, even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, you will be situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge. When you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So by this transcendental knowledge, we can cross over this ocean of miseries. Okay, so I will stop here. Today, actually, speaking about the spiritual master, I need to attend a call in which my spiritual master may be coming. We're not sure completely right now, but I have to jump on this other call. It's kind of a unique situation. Normally, we have time for questions and comments and discussion, but today I'll just end a little early, if that's okay. And I will share your homework on the group. Of course, I've already shared it, but if just in case someone missed it or something, I'll reshare the homeworks. The recording will also be shared. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call me, message me. Actually, sometimes I miss messages, so if it's something very urgent, you can call me or put it on the group. Then the other students also sometimes answer it. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Accept my obeisances. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Kripa Sindhu be able to Patitanam Pavnibhyo
Vaishnavyo, Vaishnavyo, Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Thank you.
you.